guys, welcome back to my channel. So it's been a little while, and that's because I finally had our baby. So this is Cohen, and he was born 6 days late. So my last video, say hi buddy. The lighting isn't that great because I just have the camera set up on a bookshelf because I don't have a lot of hands. No, I didn't have time to grab the tripod and stuff, so we just have her propped up. But this is little Cohen. Cohen is 12 days old today. And I thought for the first video back onto my channel, I would do my birth story video because we didn't do like a birth vlog. Robbie wasn't too keen on the idea, and honestly the hospital doesn't really let you film anything. You can take pictures, but you can't film. So I thought, what's the point? So I just figured I'd do a birth story video, which is totally fine, and I'll be able to explain everything that happened. So as you know, he was late. The last video I posted, I had recorded on a Wednesday, and the next night, so Thursday night, I started to get like little contractions here and there. Nothing consistent, and I wasn't even 100% sure if they were contractions. And then on all day Friday, they were on and off all day. And then I went to bed at 10 o'clock on Friday night, and I woke up at 11 with contractions. So I just stayed in bed most of the night, waiting for them to get closer and closer. And so for our hospital, you have to wait till they're 5 minutes apart, lasting a minute for an hour. They were getting closer and closer. Sometimes they were 10 minutes, sometimes they were 6 minutes. So they kind of were like a little off. And I figured I wasn't going to wake up Robbie until they were like 6 minutes apart. Because we live about 25 minutes away from the hospital. So I wanted to go like a little bit earlier because I didn't want like things to happen really fast. So they were about 6 minutes, and I was like, okay, I'm gonna wake up Robbie. As soon as I woke him up, they were like 2 minutes apart. He jumped out of the bed and he's like, do I have time to shower? So he took a shower. I'm not even joking. He looked like he was going to a modeling shoot when we left the house. I looked terrible. I was in my pajamas, obviously. I could barely even get ready to go because the contractions were happening so fast. They weren't like overly painful, but just enough that like it kind of stops you from what you're doing and you just have to wait. So we get to the hospital. They bring us into a room that has like a bunch of beds in it, but curtains, like just to assess me and check me out. And this always happens to me, but of course there was a new girl, and which is fine. Like, I don't have any problem with it, but I feel like it always happens to me that I get somebody that's new or something like that happens and something goes wrong. Not that anything went wrong, but you'll see. So she was like entering my stuff into the computer, and the other nurses kept coming to check on her to make sure she was doing everything okay. And then they checked me. So I was 1 centimeter dilated for just about 3 weeks, which was really discouraging because I was working really hard, trying to do everything, which I kind of think I said in the last video when I was cleaning, trying to do everything to speed things along. So 1 centimeter for so long, it was pretty discouraging. So she checked me and I was 3 centimeters, so I was very happy about that. And so they said to me that they were gonna get me to either go home or walk around the hospital for an hour. So it was my choice. So I said, obviously I wanted to stay there because we lived out of town. So I start to get dressed, and they come back in and they're like, actually, we're just going to admit you right now and break your water. So I was like, okay, at this point it's like 5 o'clock in the morning. So yeah, we left the house around, like, I woke Robbie up around 4 o'clock. So by the time we got ready and got to the hospital and stuff and all this, it's about 5 o'clock. They brought me into the room, the labor and delivery room, and the new nurse goes to put my IV in, and she was going to put it in like here. So like, I've never had an IV there before, and I do not like needles. I'm telling you this right now. So this was like the scariest part for me, was like getting IVs and stuff. So I'm like sitting there. Robbie is down getting me admitted. Like, he had to take the papers down for that. So it's just me and this like new nurse. She goes to try to put it in, and she's like digging around for it, and I'm like ready to pass out. Anyway, she keeps trying, and she bursts the blood vessel or the vein or whatever it is, and blood is everywhere. It's like it was like squirting out of my wrist. It was like all over the bed. And she's like, oh, I'm so sorry. I'll get the other nurse to do it. And at this point, I'm just like, I'm gonna pass out. So the other nurse comes in, and they also had to take blood work too. So she's like, I'm gonna do it so that I'm taking the blood work at the same time, so it's just like one prick type thing. So I was like, thank you. So she got the IV in on the top of my hand, and that was fine. I did have to get like a face cloth because I thought I was going to pass out. So then they brought in a doctor. So I don't think I've ever mentioned this before. I might have, I'm not sure, in one of my other like pregnancy videos, but I've had so many doctors. So my original like OBGYN, she was pregnant and had her baby, so she went on maternity leave. The doctor she shares her practice with, I've seen him a few times just because of like her appointments or whatever. And then I've had a resident doctor for an appointment, and then now the doctor that has taken over for my original doctor while she's on maternity leave. So I've had 4 doctors before even having the baby. This is all happening on a Saturday. So of course, like, my doctor's not working, it's like on-call doctors. Who walks in but the resident doctor that I had for one appointment. So I was like, okay, well, I've met her before, I know her. So she tries to break my water, and she can't break my water. So they had to bring in like the actual doctor on call, and he broke my water. After he broke the water, they found out that the baby had like pooped in like in the uterus. So because he was 6 days overdue, and it's very common that happens if you're overdue, but because of that, like, it can be like risky. So they had to monitor me like the whole time, like monitor the baby, and they also let me know that there was going to have to be some people from the NICU unit in the room for delivery, just in case a specialist was needed when he was born. So like that was fine. Like I said, that's fine or whatever. So at this point, it's like just before 7:30. I think they broke my water at 6. All the staff changes at 7:30 in the morning. So I get new nurses and then a new OBGYN. So I feel like I've seen like every OBGYN in the city at this point. So another one, and that's all fine. Like, everyone was really nice. Like, I have to say, like, the nurses that we had in labor and delivery were fantastic. And like I said, they had to monitor me the whole time. So like they were literally in the room with us the whole time, like staring at the computer, because I had the bands on my belly to monitor his heart rate and everything. And I, like, of course I'm still having contractions and everything. After they broke my water, they did put me on the Pitocin, is that how you say it? To kind of speed things along, like to help things get going. So the contractions started to get a little bit more intense at that point, but I was breathing through them and everything was fine. I didn't have any medication yet. So I had told them when I got there that I wasn't sure if I wanted an epidural. So I had found out like a few years ago that I have like a spinal defect, like a birth defect, where just like some of my vertebrae are fused, and it just causes me like back pain a lot. And stuff like that. So I was just really scared to get an epidural. Like, you know, I don't like needles, and then just the thought of something like going into my spine with my back hurting already was really scary for me. So I told them I wasn't sure. I asked them how long I had to decide, and they said basically like you could be 9 centimeters dilated and get one. So I was like, okay, so I'm thinking I have time, like, to kind of see how the pain is, try other medications if I wanted to, like the laughing gas and stuff like that. At this point, I didn't have anything. I'm not really sure what time it was, but a nurse pops her head in and asks if I wanted an epidural, because the doctor that was doing them had a long list of patients coming up. So it was either now, I could get one now, or wait like a long time for him to come back. So I really felt pressured to decide. Like, I really wasn't sure. And at this point, like, the contractions weren't terrible, but I'm thinking, like, what if I do really want it and I'm in a lot of pain and I have to wait? So anyways, I told them why I was scared, and they said, well, we can talk to the doctor. He can review your x-rays, because I had them, they were on my files and stuff, and see what he says if he's going to be able to do it easily. So that made me feel more comfortable. He came in and he said, everything is really clean. Like, yeah, my vertebrae are fused, but it's like really clean. So there's no issues. Like, they put epidurals, people with like rods in their backs and stuff before. He's like, so there's really, he knew he could do it. And I was like, all right, let's do it. So I decided to do it. So everything gets ready, and the contractions were getting pretty intense at this point. And the guy was really, really tall, so they had to pull my bed up as high as it could go. And the nurse was in front of me, like, holding my shoulders. I was holding a pillow, and I'm so scared because I'm, like, the whole needle thing, I'm terrified. And I'm also having contractions at the same time. So I feel like a lot was going on. He puts the numbing in, so he's like, bee sting, and I feel like the little needle, which wasn't really that bad, like, felt like a pinch. But when he started to actually put the epidural in, I could feel it. And I was saying, like, it hurts, like it really hurts. And he knew like where I was feeling the pain, so he's like, I have to put more numbing in. So at this point, I feel like I'm going to throw up. Like I thought I was going to pass out, like on this nurse. Anyways, once he like did the more numbing, it was a lot better. So once the epidural and everything was in, I felt great. They like were saying, oh, she's having a contraction right now. Couldn't feel anything. I was like, okay, this is fantastic. And at this point, I'm pretty tired because, like I said, I had gone to sleep the night before at 10 o'clock and woke up at 11. So I'd slept like an hour. So after the epidural, I was feeling pretty comfortable, and Robbie was getting hungry. So my mom was there, Robbie was there, and my dad and my stepmom were in the waiting room. And there was a little cafeteria in the hospital that opened at 11. So Robbie and my dad and them were going to the cafeteria to get food, and my mom was going to go, and I said, it's fine, like I'm just laying here, nothing's happening, I don't feel anything, just go eat. And I couldn't eat at this point because once you have the epidural, you're not allowed to eat. So I said, just go eat, it's fine. And my mom decided, no, I'm just going to stay. So they go off. My mom's there, and then the nurse was like, okay, I'm going to get the peanut ball. And it's basically like a really big exercise ball, but it's like the shape of a peanut. So like it's like kind of like two nubs. And they put it between your legs to kind of open up your hips so that you dilate a little faster. So she went to put that between my legs, and the baby's heart rate like dropped a lot. So she was like moving the monitor around, trying to find the heartbeat, trying to find a better spot. She couldn't find it. So they had to call in the doctor. A bunch of nurses came in, and they were like moving me around like in all these different positions trying to get the heart rate back. So it was like a bit of a panic. My mom is like kind of freaking out. I'm actually all right. Like I'm just kind of calm. I'm doing whatever they tell me to do, and I'm thinking it's fine. Like they're gonna find it. It's fine. They were about to get me onto my hands and knees, and then the doctor said, no, we're just going to put a monitor on the baby's head. So that's when they literally go in and put like a little sticker on the baby's head, so you have like a wire coming out, and that's how they monitor the heart rate. Of course, like again, things only happen to me. The cord that they had used wasn't working, so they had plugged it into the computer thing, and nothing was happening. They're like, it's not, like either there's no, like the heartbeat's not there, or it's not working. Like, so they sent a girl to get another cord. Anyways, it was the cord that wasn't working. So everything was fine. My mom was like wanting to text Robbie. She looks over and his phone is sitting there. So of course he goes off to eat, doesn't bring his phone. We have no way of contacting him if anything was going wrong. But thankfully everything was fine. So he came back, and I told him like, you missed all the excitement. Basically with the peanut ball, I couldn't lay on one side. So I was on my left side pretty much the whole time. If they tried to roll me over on the other side, the heart rate would drop. So I was kind of stuck in one position for like most of labor. I was feeling pretty comfortable for a while, and every time that the epidural would kick in, I could feel it really cold through my back. And I thought like it felt really good because I was pretty warm. At one point I was feeling really hot, and I could hear the pump going for the epidural. So I'm thinking, oh, it's gonna feel cold, it's gonna feel really nice. And I couldn't feel it. And I'm thinking like, well, normally I'm feeling it. And I didn't really say anything. And then I started to notice that I could start to feel like my feet. And it's like, an epidural is the weirdest thing. Like it's not at all what I was expecting. I was thinking like you were completely numb, like you couldn't feel anything. But it's like almost like your like leg is asleep. Like you know it's there, you can feel something touching you, but you don't have the sensation. So it's like, say you're itchy and you can't get the itch, like you're scratching and like the itch is still there. And they test it with ice. So they have like a little bag of ice, and they put it where you could feel it, and then on your leg, you can tell there's something touching your leg, but you can't tell that it's cold. I started to feel like sensation more in my feet. And I'm thinking, okay, I think the epidural's not working. I had two nurses, they were like kind of tag teaming on their breaks and stuff. And the first nurse, I had told her that I could feel the cold, and she's like, yeah, like that's what happens, whatever. She's on lunch break, so the other nurse is here. And I said to her, I'm like, I don't feel the cold in my back anymore from the epidural. And she says, oh, that's fine. So I'm like, okay. But I'm really thinking that something isn't right. So I just kind of leave it. And then I could start to feel, I'm not sure at what point this was, but I could feel the contractions on one side. With an epidural, it's kind of like with gravity, so they want you to be laying down. The epidural's going down, but I'm on my side. So I can feel like nothing on this side of my body, but I'm starting to feel everything on this side of my body because I'm laying on that side because of the whole heart rate and the peanut ball, whatever. So I'm starting to really feel the contractions like on this side. They started to get a little worse, and I was telling them that I could feel it, and they had kept checking me, and after, I think it was after the peanut ball, they had checked me, I was 6 centimeters. At this point, I could feel the contractions, and I'm almost feeling the urge to push. Like they say, like if you feel like you have to poop, that's when you feel like the urge to push. And it was like the strangest thing. Like you think you know what it's going to feel like, but you really don't. So I had said to her, I'm like, I'm feeling like I kind of have to push. And I was having a hard time at this point. Like I was in a lot of pain. Like I could feel the contractions. I was like squeezing the bed so tight, like the railings. And I was having a hard time. Like I was trying to breathe through it, could not really breathe through them. Like, I could feel it all. So I'm like, at this point, I'm like, okay, this epidural is not working. I had told him that I felt like I wanted to push, and she had checked me, and it was less than 2 hours, and I'd gone from 6 centimeters to 9 centimeters. So she was checking me, but because I was laying on one side of my cervix was like basically 10 centimeters, but the other side was like 9. So they wanted me to roll over to the other side, but I couldn't because of the heart rate. So, and everything was happening really, really fast. So I'm like, I really feel like I need to push. I'm having a really hard time. I have my eyes closed the whole time because the contractions were coming and coming and coming. So they call in the doctor, they call in everybody, and I really don't even remember much at this point. I just remember being in so much pain, and that's all I could think about. So the doctor comes in and he's like, we need to get this baby out now because the heart rate is dropping. So it was like a huge rush. They're like positioning me. I'm just having contraction after contraction. I can't really focus on what I'm doing. And the doctor was like really like not strict, but like straightforward, wanted to get this baby out, was like very serious, which is good. So like they're trying to get me to push. Like we had done some practice pushes. And it's so weird because before like the baby is like really ready to come out, you don't really know what you're pushing. Because it's like I couldn't really feel like where I was supposed to push. So at first I was having a really hard time pushing and feeling what I was doing. They're really trying to rush. The doctor is saying to me like, you have to push, you do this. And like I said, my eyes were closed. I'm sure I was making sounds. I don't even know. And he's like, are you listening to me? Focus. Are you listening to me? So then I stopped and I looked at him and I was like, okay, like, yes. At that point, I'm like really pushing hard. Like I'm squeezing Robbie's hand. I didn't even realize I had Robbie's hand. And my mom said that she thought that he was going, like his hand was going to be broken, that he would have to go to the emergency room because that's how much I was squeezing his hand. Had no idea I was doing it. Like I said, like the doctor really wanted the baby out now. At one point he said, okay, slow down your pushing. I think we can get him out without any tears. And I'm thinking to myself, like, that's great. Like, that'd be fantastic. But I'm also thinking, I can't slow down a push. Like, when you have that feeling, you just want to push it out. So the fact that I'm, like, trying to, like, slowly push it out, the most difficult thing ever. And I'm thinking, there's no way I could do this. And then he says, actually, this is a really big baby. I don't think we're going to be able to do that. So anyways, he had to make an incision, so I had to have an episiotomy. And I was kind of, like, at the point, like, I was scared a little bit in my mind because I'd always heard that it was, like, a long time to heal from it and whatever. And I'm thinking that it's going to be painful when he does it. Didn't feel it when he did it. And then they also had to use, like, the little vacuum on Cohen's head to get him out. But from the time that I started pushing to the time that he was out was 8 minutes. So it was really, really fast, and I didn't really think it was that fast at the time, but then I talked to my sister-in-law, and she said that she pushed for, like, over 2 hours, and I'm thinking, I couldn't have gone through that for 2 hours. Like, I was in so much pain. So if anyone, like, has, like, pushed for a long time and a lot of pain, like, kudos to you, because that 8 minutes, like, I couldn't imagine doing it longer than 8 minutes. But it really didn't feel like 8 minutes. I had no idea, no concept of time. So then he was out. Everything was good. They didn't need any of, like, the extra staff that they had in there. So it was like, there was 10 people in there of staff, and then my mom and Robbie. So there was 12 people all together, well, 13 plus me. And that's how many people were in the room, like, staff for the delivery. So he was born, he was 8 pounds, 15 ounces when he was born, and 21 3/4 inches long. And then they had to stitch me up. And I can tell you, that was the worst part. Like I said, I could feel everything on one side of my body, and I swear the stitches are only on this side of my body where I could feel everything. So I have him on my chest. I'm trying to enjoy this moment, and I'm literally like crying in pain. Well, first I bawled when he was born. Like, I couldn't even help it. I was crying so much because I was just so happy. I couldn't believe he was here. Yeah, so the stitching out was the worst. I was in so much pain. I was like telling him, like, I can feel it, it hurts. So then he's like, okay, I'll put some more numbing. And it felt like the longest period of time in my life. And he kept saying, just 10 more minutes and we'll be done. And I'm thinking, 10 more minutes of this? That feels like a really long time. And then at one point he's like, 2 more stitches. I have no idea how many stitches I had because he didn't say, but I think there was a lot. So that was really painful. But once that was over, everything was good. We got to spend our time in that room. I think we were in there for an hour. We tried the whole breastfeeding thing for the first time and all of that. Then they wheeled us into our room. Everything was happy. We were all happy. And we had some visitors that night. Oh, and I almost forgot this part. So, like I said, with my fear of needles, before they were about to wheel me into our actual room, they were like taking the stuff out of my IV, but they had to leave the IV in. And so she was like fiddling around with that, almost passed out. Then she went to take out my epidural, and I couldn't feel it when she was taking it out, but just knowing what was happening in my mind, like I knew that something was happening, I almost passed out. Like, I can't feel it, but I know what's going on, and like they had to put like a cold face cloth on my face. Like, how embarrassing is that? It's like all in my mind. It's like I don't feel it. So like if you're like that, like let me know. Everything was good. So our first night, we were supposed to leave. This is Saturday night. We were leaving on Monday. So you have to stay 48 hours for the first baby. So Saturday night, I hadn't peed yet. I was trying to go to the bathroom, and I'm in the bathroom. We had a private room, and I was having a hard time in the bathroom. So I told my mom to call a nurse to come help me. So the nurse comes in, and she's in the bathroom with me. Robbie and my mom are like just outside the door with the baby, and I hear my mom yell, "He's choking." I can tell you, I've never had like my like inside sink so much, because I'm sitting there on the toilet. I can't move. I'm like, what is going on? So the nurse runs out. Like, I'm so happy and thankful that the nurse just happened to be in our room at the time. She runs out and grabs the baby. What happened was he had like phlegm that was coming out of his stomach, like that would have been in there like when he was like still inside of me. And normally when you're pushing them out, it squeezes all the fluids out, but because he was born so fast, the fluids didn't get squeezed out. So, and it's like not just like a liquid, it's like a thick, like bubbly phlegm stuff. So when it would come up, it wouldn't just come out of his mouth, it would like get sucked back in. Like it's like I know it was a really gross description, but that's what was happening, and he was choking on it. Like he couldn't get it out. So like they have like those little suction things. So she's like doing that, and she's like patting his back, and like more of it's just coming out. And I'm sitting on the toilet and I can't see anything at this point. And I'm like freaking out, what's happening? And the nurse is like, it's okay, everything's fine. I get out of the bathroom, I get back into the bed, he starts doing it again. And I'm sitting there, I'm bawling. I'm watching the nurse like take care of him, but I am bawling. Because like it's just like to see your baby doing that. Like I had just had him, well, and I had him, I guess I didn't mention, but I had him at 2:44 p.m. So I don't even know how long labor was, but you can do the math because I haven't done the math. But anyway, so at this point it's like 8 o'clock. No, it's later than that. It's probably 9 o'clock, 9:30 maybe. And I'm sitting in the bed bawling. She gives him back to me. The nurse leaves. I'm holding him. I'm still crying because it was just so emotional. He starts doing it again in my arms. And so I flip him over like as if you're like burping them, and like the stuff is coming out, and I'm just crying. And I'm like, call the nurse. My mom's like, you're doing everything right. And I'm like screaming, like, just call the nurse, because I don't know what I'm doing. I don't know if I'm doing it right. I just want them to be here because I don't want anything to happen. So like they came in and checked everything. They're like, yeah, he's okay. It was so terrifying. He did it a few times through the night, but Robbie and I kind of had dealt with it so many times. So I would pat him. Robbie would squeeze the stuff out of his mouth. So we kind of started to get a little bit like more comfortable with like dealing with it. but we didn't sleep. Well, he probably slept. I did not sleep. I just stared at him all night because I didn't want to go to sleep and then have it happen. And like obviously I was sore, so I couldn't just jump out of bed to grab him out of the little bassinet thing. So I was like on alert all night, did not sleep. So then the next day we had a whole lot of visitors, like a lot of visitors. So like this is the weekend, so a lot of like the staff and stuff weren't there, like for in terms of like our actual doctors. So my family doctor obviously wasn't there because he comes in on Monday. So the like on-call doctor had come in to do his checkup to see if we could leave the next day and everything. So everything was good. They had kept checking up on me. Everything was good. Now the next morning, we're waiting for our family doctor. We're thinking we're going home. So it's Monday. Thinking that we're going home. The nurses were checking him. Like they have this little light to check jaundice. So they're checking his jaundice, and he was looking a little yellow, and they're like, the jaundice is a little high, so we're not sure if you're going to be able to leave. And I'm like, oh my gosh. So they're thinking that my family doctor is going to want us to stay. So anyways, we wait for the family doctor. He comes around like 11 o'clock, I think. And he says, yeah, he's going to have to get blood work done. And depending on what the blood work says, he's probably going to have to stay and go under the lights. So they put them under like these like special lights that help draw out the jaundice. And the jaundice comes out like through their like poop and pee, like mostly their poop. And because of the jaundice, he was like super tired. They came to do his blood work around 1 o'clock in the afternoon, and it came back around 2 o'clock, and it was quite high. So they wheel in this little table, and we were thinking like he was going into an incubator with these lights. They bring in this little table, and the light's on the bottom, and it's like a little hammock, and then there's like a built-in sleeper on the top. So you like put him in it, and you put his arms out, so the light is just touching his back. So you put him in his diaper, and his light's just touching his back. He absolutely hated it. He was so miserable. It was so sad because you couldn't just pick him up because he's strapped into this thing. So you just had to like kind of like lean over on it with him and try to console him. And it was so emotional. Like it was really hard to see him laying there. He was not happy. So they were coming back to do blood work at 1 a.m. So that'd be 1 a.m. like Tuesday morning. And if the blood work was good or whatever, he has to wait 12 more hours, so then you can leave. So we're thinking maybe at like 1 o'clock in the afternoon on Tuesday we could go home. They come back to do the blood work at 1 o'clock in the morning. They come back at 4 a.m. with the results, and it's gotten worse. They had to bring in the incubator. And I'm thinking, like, why wouldn't we have just brought the incubator in the first place? Because the girl's like, yeah, the table thing doesn't work very well. I was so upset. I'm just like, then why did we do it? And apparently that's like the hospital policy. Like the nurses know that this thing doesn't work, but they have to follow this policy that they want you to do the table thing first. And I'm thinking it doesn't even make any sense. They wheel in this incubator at 4 a.m. We have a small private room. We had to rearrange the whole room. Robbie's like asleep. We had to wake him up to move him because he sleeps through everything. So when he goes in the incubator, he goes in completely naked. Like no diaper, no nothing. There's like a pad under him. If he pees, they have to take it and weigh it. Every time that he pees, they have to weigh it. When I first saw him in the incubator, I bawled. And it's like I knew that it wasn't like a big deal for him in there. Like it was just so that he could be under this light. But I bawled. And like it was like 4 a.m. I didn't sleep. I just stayed up. I had to feed him. I had to get up and feed him every 3 hours. But I couldn't wake him up because he was so tired. So the jaundice makes them really tired. We later were informed that he had this jaundice because when he had the vacuum, like the suction on his head, it left a really big bruise. The jaundice is a byproduct, delirium, that is a byproduct of red blood cells. So the red blood cells were really concentrating at the bruise, which were producing a lot of delirium, and his little liver couldn't clean it up fast enough. So jaundice is quite common in babies, but usually it just goes away on its own. It's not that bad. But it kept getting worse because his body was really trying to heal that bruise. So I had to feed him a lot so that it would clean him out. But he was so tired. And being in the incubator, it was really warm. And I'd take him out and he was like lifeless. Like I never cried so much in my life. Like until like 7:30 in the morning, like I just felt really alone because Robbie was asleep. I just sat there and cried and held him. And like he was completely asleep. You couldn't wake him up. You couldn't do anything. And then once the nurses switched, there's this one nurse, she was my absolute favorite. She's also the lactation consultant. So she wasn't in until Monday, so I hadn't even seen a lactation consultant yet. So he's not waking up, I'm struggling breastfeeding him myself, so I was very emotional. So she comes in, she checks the incubator, and finds out that it's on way too hot. So like, or warm, I guess it's not hot. His temperature was so high, like, so the jaundice made him sleepy, but he was also so tired because he was so warm. And it's like, I just knew there was something wrong. Like, he shouldn't have been like that, lifeless almost. So anyways, she fixed that. They had to put the incubator down to as low as it could go. I had to keep him out of it for a while so it would regulate the temperature back down. And they also told me that they were going to file an incident report, that the incubator was set that high to begin with. So anyways, so emotional, but he's fine, and they said like he's okay, like nothing happened to him, but it shouldn't have happened in the first place. Once he went in there, we did notice that his color was getting back to normal, but my gosh, at this point I was so tired of being in the hospital room. And like, Robbie would go home every once in a while. My mom was there pretty much every day. Well, she was there every day, so she'd come so that he could leave to go home to like take care of our animals. Our neighbors were also taking care of them, but he was having a hard time being in that room all the time. The bed that he had to sleep on was not a bed, it was like a pull-out chair. It was super uncomfortable, I'm sure, but it was hard for me to stay in there. Like, I didn't even leave the room. I left the room to shower one day, and the shower was right across the room from my room. Right across the hall from my room. So I never left, I never went anywhere. The only good thing about being there that long was that I kind of had the nurses like at my call whenever I wanted. So if I needed something like for pain or anything like that, I could just call them. Whereas if we would have went home, I wouldn't have had that because I was in a lot of pain. Like, my stitches were in a lot of pain. So it was nice to have that. By the time that we got home, like, I felt a lot better. After that, they had come to do his blood work that like in the middle of the night. No, I think they came in the afternoon at 1 o'clock. It was every 12 hours to do his blood work on Tuesday. And it was a lot better. It had dropped a lot. It was in the range, like the safe range, but only by like 5 points. So they wanted to keep him on. Like, they had been talking with my family doctor for him. They wanted to keep him on it for another 12 hours at least, like till the morning, just to keep it going so that it doesn't go back up. So they came back to do the blood work at 8 a.m. or 7 or 8. Then they came back, so this is Wednesday morning, and they said like now he's way below, like he's 80 points below. So that was fantastic news. The family doctor came and got him all cleared to go, so we were able to go home on Wednesday afternoon. My gosh, what an experience. So basically that's our birth story. I'm hoping that was easy enough to follow. It was so much. Like, we had visitors, like a lot of support. We had lots of people bringing us food, but yeah, I was so happy to get out of there and get home. So we got home on the Wednesday, and we had to go back on the next morning for his checkup at the hospital at the discharge clinic. His weight had gone up a little bit. He did lose more weight than he was supposed to because I couldn't get him to feed. So he had dropped down to 8 pounds from 8.15. So he had lost 15 ounces. On the Thursday, he was up 3 ounces, and then we went back on Monday, and he was up to 8 pounds 10 ounces. So it was a really good improvement. But we were on a crazy feeding schedule. I had to feed him every 3 hours and then pump afterwards and give him top-ups with a little special bottle so that it didn't like confuse him, like nipple confusion and stuff. It was a lot. I was really tired because by the time you're finished feeding and then the key's asleep, you start pumping, you get that stuff done, like you have other stuff to do, like you really aren't getting much sleep because you don't get to sleep even 3 hours because he gets to sleep 3 hours. And then you have other stuff to do. That was really difficult, but on Monday we got the all clear that I didn't need to do all that anymore, and I could just feed him when he wanted to be fed. So that's fantastic. Although we are dealing with some like spit up issues, like major spit up issues, like not just a little bit, like full on throwing up all over me, which is kind of scary, but we have our doctor's appointment with my family doctor tomorrow, so I'm hoping that we'll get some answers on that to see if it's normal. I've been like Googling and like YouTubing so much stuff, and there's just so much information out there. I have no idea what's going on. I'm just going to talk to the doctor about it. So I feel like today he's feeding a lot, like more frequently, because he's just like spitting a lot of it up, so I feel like not a lot is staying in his belly. He still seems to be pretty happy. As you can see, he's just sleeping. So yeah, that's our birth story, and now we can start our whole lives together. And if you want to see like more frequent updates on him, go follow my Instagram because I post a lot about him on there. So he's already had his newborn photo shoot. I cannot wait to get those photos and post them. I posted my story about him, and I post just pictures of him, and I'm telling you, he's the cutest baby ever. Of course I'm allowed to say that. And I'll be trying to do as many like vlogs as I can do with him, just like kind of day in the life of what it's like to be a new mom as we get into new routines and everything. And then of course the cleaning videos still. When he's napping, that's when I get to do my cleaning. So subscribe if you want to see all of this stuff. And if you're new, subscribe. If you liked this video, give it a thumbs up. If you have any similar stories about if you have given birth, let me know in the comments. Has there been anything that's scary that happened to you? Did you have the birth that you planned? I'd say it wasn't really the birth I planned because I didn't want to have an epidural like in my mind, but then I got one, but which is fine. I'm still happy that I did. So yeah, let me know in the comments what your experiences were. Do you have anything similar, anything different? And if you're a new mom too, we can share stories and help each other out, because some days some days I feel really confident and some days I have no idea what I'm doing. So we can do it together. So thanks guys for watching, and we will see you in the next one. Say bye, Cohen. Oh. Bye guys.